You didn't read the email?
He didn't show it to me.
That's that. So,
Alright.
we will be going live in just a little bit.
Normally this runs pretty smoothly. Today isn't that day.
Just one of those days in the wonderful world of
Media.
media. All right.
WVOG Community Radio presents the Windy City Review with your hosts, Queenie Green and Paul Collins.
All right. We are back for another Windy City Review. Once again, you heard the recording. I am your host, Queenie Green. My co-host down at the end, Mr. Paul Collins. Best man.
Yes, man. Thank you so much, Queenie.
And today we have Deidre, and say your last name for me correctly. Baumann. And Miss Baumann, you are running for circuit court judge.
I am.
So we have a lot of questions for you tonight. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I will answer whatever questions you have.
So let's go right on into it. Let's give everyone an introduction of yourself, and we'll let Paul come in with our announcements, and then we'll get right into it.
Sounds great. I am running countywide in the Cullen Sheehan vacancy. We just received our punch numbers this week, and my punch number is 219. I have been practicing for 27 years, doing primarily civil litigation, although I started out in the public defender's office. And I practice in state and federal court at both trial and appellate levels. And I do employment discrimination, civil rights work, personal injury, and have been doing that for most of the past 27 years. I have my own law firm, Baumann and Schuldiner, and I'm proud of the fact that I have served people and people in need for these many years.
Okay. Well, Paul, give us our announcement.
All right.
And we'll go right into it.
As usual, our legal precedents have to be stated. The views expressed are not necessarily those of the Sour Patch Media or Windy City Review. We'd like to give a shout out and a thank you to Sour Patch Media for sponsoring us this week. Thank you, Cello. Appreciate all that you do for us. All right. My start off is always, let's work. So initially we had two guests this week. It was supposed to be yourself.
What you forgot about if you like to donate,
Oh.
if you like to support us, don't forget that. We need our donations.
We're looking for donations. So if you would like to donate to the Windy City Review, you can go to $ Windy City Review, which is the Cash App address, or WVOG Chicago for PayPal. Again, that's $ Windy City Review for the Cash App, or WVOG Chicago for PayPal. All right, now let's work. Going back in, initially we had two electees coming in today. Aside from yourself, we had Supreme Court Judge P. Scott Neville Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, he's coming from Springfield, so he will not be able to make it in a timely fashion, so he just rescheduled with us. Now, I did a whole lot of research on him. I only found a few things on you for your years, but they're very interesting. I've been told that you worked on the Burr Oak Cemetery.
That's right. If you recall, approximately 10 years ago, there was just a awful, horrendous
Yes.
situation. There were employees of the cemetery digging up bodies, dumping them in another portion of the cemetery, and then reselling the grave sites. Now, those people did go to jail for that, but for quite a while it left just a disaster, families not knowing where their loved ones were.
We
My
have a
family
personal,
My family, that is my family's main cemetery home. So a lot
sorry
of
to
those,
hear that.
A lot of the families that were out speaking, a lot of them were my family members.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. It's Borough Oak Cemetery is a historical cemetery. Emmett Till is buried there, and it was a very difficult situation. A long-time client of mine and friend called me and said, "My God, we can't get into the cemetery. Please do something." And I did some investigation. There were some initial reports out that there had been some criminal activity. So I immediately went into Chancery, filed a first class action, and was responsible for obtaining a receiver for the cemetery until things could be settled. It was not only a matter of them digging up grave sites, but there was very poor record keeping.
Yes, yes.
And gravestones missing.
It was just
or
very
non-exist-
disrespectful.
Exactly.
But I have a question.
Sure.
About that. And this is, I guess, me on with my logic of what is the actual process? Because that's something that, of course, I'm not in that business, so I don't understand that totally. There was a lot of understanding that came from that situation, but for those out there that they don't understand that situation, is there a proper way of expanding or proper way of care when it comes to a funeral home? I'm sorry, not a funeral home, but a cemetery. Is there a proper way of doing pretty much what they did? Because with my thoughts, and this is just kind of being for everyone, what is a cemetery to do in the millennium when they are maybe
Out of space.
when it's a cemetery that's been around for 80 years? We're now in the millennium, and they're still in business, and we have people dying now versus people that were buried there from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. What's that? You know what I mean? What type of proper way is it to make that space?
There is a Cemetery Care Act, and I won't get into the details, but in this case, many of the families there had purchased pre-need contracts with the cemetery. So they, in effect, reserved the spots for their family members and loved ones prior to, obviously, their being deceased. And the cemetery was making money that way. And yes, there is a problem. At some point, you run out of space. But generally, in this country, as far as I know, we have not been placing people in layers, although there are certain parts of the world and maybe certain parts of the country where they do bury people on top of one another. But that was not the case, and that was not what people had contracted for at Baroque, and that was the problem.
I think it was just badly done. Just, because the imagery of what we saw just was broken headstones, just seems like things were just picked up and just kind of thrown over to a dump site versus, I think even with my family, I think we probably would have felt less disrespect if we were contacted saying, hey, this is the situation, we're 50 years in, and this is how we will be making our space from this point on, or something like that.
At a minimum, that contacting family members and so forth, but I think part of the problem was, again, the record keeping was so poor that I don't know that they had records of who owned certain grave sites and so forth. But that is required. Record keeping is required. If there is a pre-need contract, that contract has to be honored. The fact that a cemetery may run out of space is an entirely foreseeable occurrence, and they need to plan for that. And again, there are certain legislative provisions that provide for the continuing upkeep of the cemetery, and they have to have money for that, because a cemetery is a place where the family members will visit for hopefully in perpetuity,
But
Yeah.
forever.
in this case, the money that was being made wasn't being put toward renovation of the cemetery. It was going into their pockets, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Because I know they were making more money, but they
Mhm.
just weren't doing what they were supposed to do.
Mhm.
But it would, but even if they were putting it back into the coffers of the cemetery, it would have been inappropriate
Yes,
and
I understand.
illegal.
Very, very good information. A second case I found for you was with Louis Aguilera.
Oh, yes. He was a public school teacher. We did not prevail in that case, but it was an important case. He had written a book detailing his, I
His own
believe,
experience in
his
life.
own experiences in life. And I can't remember the name of the school that he was teaching at. He a very good teacher, nothing wrong with his teaching. And at that school, they had a very, I don't know how to describe it, a open relationship with their students.
yes.
Since it was a very social place and it was just a different manner of learning or what have you. And a student did accuse him of some inappropriate contact,
Okay.
not physical.
But there was no evidence other than the student saying that, and I thought it was
Correct.
the mother prompted this because his book was in the school, in the library, but he never taught on it. He never mentioned his book. It just happened to be in the library.
It was in the library, and the student, in fact, had taken it
and read it.
it. Well, at
okay.
least took it out of the library, as indicated,
Okay.
by their own records. So it was quite an interesting case, but unfortunately, we as plaintiffs did not have enough evidence to show that it was because of, or a motivating factor was his speech.
Okay. Right, because it was the offense was you're violating his First Amendment right to freedom of speech.
Correct.
So okay.
Yeah, but it was a very interesting case. A sad result for him and for his students, quite frankly.
True. So you are running for circuit court judge, correct?
Yes.
And this is something that I just recently learned as well. When you're running for judge, because you're running for a certain seat.
Yes.
I'd really like for you to break that down for us, because all of these, all of my years, you hear you're running for a judge. You think you're just running for a judge. But when I met you guys we met before the breakfast,
yes.
but over at the breakfast for all of the judicial candidates, there's these certain vacancies that you guys are running for.
And that's the only thing you can run for when there's a vacancy. That's the only time you can put forward.
Yes, well.
Because you get assigned. I know you get assigned or
Sure.
temporary.
That's temporary. There are different ways you can become a judge in Cook County. You can be appointed by the Supreme Court, and those are usually temporary, although until you win, although there are certainly cases where they continually appoint even though someone hasn't necessarily won. You can go through the associate judge process, and there is a committee of the presiding judges, the chief judge, and there are usually 300 candidates who come in, submit their credentials, and meet with the committee, and then they select down from that group, and ultimately all of the full circuit judges then vote on the associate judges. And then what I am doing is running for full circuit judge, and we are required to select a vacancy, and vacancies occur when someone retires, essentially. So depending on the timeline, there can be one vacancy, there can be 20 vacancies. In this case, within the time frame that we had, there were 13 countywide vacancies, and all of the candidates have to select which vacancies to submit for. We're required to submit a certain number of signatures. I believe this time around it was about 3,200 good signatures, valid signatures of registered voters in Cook County, which means we submit 3 times the number.
3,200.
It's quite a, yes.
That's a daunting number.
It's a daunting number, but you get out into the community and you meet people, so it's actually a lot of fun in a certain respect. It is. I don't think that the signature requirement is overly burdensome, and it does select some people out. You have to be serious and you dedicated to running. So you can initially file petitions for a countywide vacancy and a sub-circuit vacancy. Now, we have the countywide, and then the county is also divided into sub-circuits. I think there are 14 of them.
So what I was
Yes.
asked, just promoting the show, and because up into March 12th, which of course the election is March 17th.
Yes.
So up until the 12th, we have so many people from the breakfast coming in,
Good.
along with you, coming in and we're calling this is the You Be the Judge segment for the Windy City Review. Now, promoting that and talking to people and letting them know that I have these judges coming in, and I wanted to show the importance, because at the end of the day, the judges that are voted on and picked to have these seats, these are the people that are going to be making decisions on a lot of people's lives.
Absolutely.
And one of the main questions that I get, and I got so many of those, what's the terminology for and the distinction from the judges that are at just your everyday police priest? If you get a ticket, you want to contest it, and you want to go to court about it. Who are those judges versus and so can you break that down of what the terminology is for a judge of just a traffic stop that you like to go, and you've got to go into 111th Court. You got to go to Skokie Courthouse versus Circuit Court versus that breakdown, because that's what a lot of people want to know.
Okay, essentially, all of the full circuit judges have co-equal authority over all cases, whether it be at the Daly Center in traffic, in Skokie, in Bridgeview, in Markham. Everyone has the jurisdiction, the ability to hear whatever cases come before him or her. However, the chief judge, who is now Judge Evans, decides, most likely with other judges, where people are assigned. Along with, I suppose, where we would like to be assigned. Whatever that's worth.
So meaning, if you were elected and you got that seat, we could see you at any one of the courthouses at any given time, depending on where you're assigned and where. Okay. So there's no certain no certain vacancy that deals with the precincts versus certain.
No, everyone is co-equal. But with that said, most of the beginning judges, and that would include myself, we would start out in traffic. And start hearing smaller cases, because there's a learning curve like anything else. I've been practicing 27 years. I know what the law is very, very well within my area. Do I know that much about divorce law? No. And so there's always there's always something to learn.
Of course.
But for jurisdiction-wise, everyone has co-equal authority.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. I hope that really helped lives. That was a lot of questions that I received. So, as what I did was I took all of the flyers and cards and things from the breakfast, and I put that over social media, saying, "Look, we have these people coming in.
Great.
Research these people, find out what cases they're attached to, find out who's running and who may be elected." And that was one of the biggest questions of, well, which ones are the ones that may be over at where I live, where the courthouse is for where I live, and where.
Well, this is why it's so important for everyone to learn about all the judges, because say you're in this the 9th Judicial Sub-Circuit, let's say, which is on the north side, and your local courthouse is Skokie. Well, maybe you'll be placed up in Skokie, but maybe you'll be placed elsewhere.
Right, and that's not to say if something happens around where you live, something may happen over on a whole other side of town, and you may have to go to that courtroom. So that doesn't necessarily mean that judge will always be sitting here in Skokie, handling Skokie cases.
Right, so people have to be aware of who they're voting for, period, because the judges can ultimately be sitting in any court in which a person can appear. It's very important.
Now, you're also the president of the North Suburban Bar Association?
I was president of the North Suburban Bar Association, so I'm a North Sider, and I historically have done a lot of work up in the Skokie Courthouse.
Okay.
So I became, several years ago, more than several now, president of the North Suburban Bar. But for the last handful of years, I've been president of the Suburban Bar Coalition. And that organization primarily brings together the different suburban bar associations, the North Suburban, the West Suburban, the South Suburban, Southwest, and Northwest Suburban Bar Associations, to do judicial evaluations for the retention candidates. Now let me explain what the
Break
retention.
it down for us, please.
So March 17th we'll be voting in the primary. However, those judges who are already sitting, who have already won in past years, past election cycles, every, I believe, 6 years, they come up on the, quote, retention ballot.
Okay.
And that is just a list of judges who are currently sitting and have been sitting presumably for the last 6 years, and they must win a percentage, 60, I want to say, I'm not quite sure, 60 or so percent of the votes of the people casting ballots. So it's not 60% of the electorate or 60% of registered voters. It's of people showing up to the polls, and that is it's been very difficult to get someone off as a judge. So in other words, in most cases, judges are retained on that retention ballot. Now in this last election cycle, last November, there was a judge. There was a lot of information about him and what he had been involved with previously, relating to Burge and all of that, and he was not retained.
I do recall that case.
Yes, but that was an aberration. So again, that's why it's important to do your research and look up the judicial candidates for the primary. And the other thing is, in most races, the primary will determine whether or not you become a judge. I would not, if I prevailed on March 17th, I would not have a Republican contender in November.
Okay.
So it would be an automatic type thing. In some of the sub-circuits, there may be Republican contenders, and those candidates will then have to continue to run and
in the general.
Yeah, and
Okay.
run in the general.
Okay, that's very. Thank you so much. That is enlightening.
And also, again, if you can give us your punch number, so we know that
219.
219. So for everyone that may be just now tuning in, or will see this at some other point, thank you for tuning in. This is the Windy City Review, where Chicago politics comes to you. Not just Chicago politics, but politics in a whole. This is a community-based show, and we invite any and everyone that work towards empowering, uplifting, and just bettering our community. We are sitting today with judge candidate, circuit court candidate, and say the vacancy for us, please.
It's the Colleen Sheehan vacancy. I mentioned there were 13 vacant countywide vacancies. I will be the 12th vacancy, and you can tell from the punch number 219. You will have gone through 218 names before
Yes.
you get to mine
So
on the ballot.
So punch number 219. So if you're tuned into this, production and the show today, if you'd like to support Ms. Baumann, you can find her on the punch 19. And if you, once again, say your last name correctly for me.
My name is
I'm bad with names.
No, it's quite all right. My name is Deidre Baumann. That's Baumann. And if I have a website, if anyone would like further information, it's www.deidre, DEIDRE, for judge.com, and that's the word for. And I have a list of my publications, teaching, and so forth. If you want to get into the dirt a little bit on my many things I've done over the years.
27 years practicing.
Correct.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank you for tuning in, and check out Miss Deidre Baumann if you'd like to support her. Once again, punch 29. 219. I'm sorry. 219.
219.
219. All right, Mr. Collins.
Yeah, well, I had a question. Again, when we go out and we talk to the community and we ask them and we tell them who we're going to have on, not necessarily names, but positions, for instance, for judge. Couple of questions I got asked. One of the things was, and I don't know how much direct impact this would have on you, but a lot of people are still concerned with the consent decree that is not being, right now, according to what we just looked up, CPD is missing 37 of the 50 agreed upon deadlines. So that's an issue that people are worried about. Cannabis state. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, as a judicial candidate, I cannot offer necessarily any opinions regarding how I might come out on a case or not, but I am very excited about the change in the laws. I think it's offering people a real opportunity. It's offering the local and state governments some ability to raise money, which we desperately need.
Definitely.
So I'm excited, and I'm excited about the education they're putting forth along with the legalization. People have to understand that even though it's legal in Illinois, federally, it's still illegal. Even though it's legal to use, you cannot drive under the influence. And so I think, once people understand what the laws are, there's an opportunity. And of course, there are health, medicinal reasons that my sister suffers from fibromyalgia, and she would never in a million years do anything illegal. Now she's in a lot of pain. Now she's considering, okay, maybe I'll see a doctor and ask about it.
And there's
so it's
many
opening
CBDs, and
there's
so
so many applications.
There's so many different ways where a person just doesn't necessarily have to smoke marijuana. There's CBDs.
Right. The THC is what we're trying to.
Right. I've even seen. I just saw an ad for they're bad salts that contain CBD that they're saying that are perfect for fibromyalgia patients, and that's just a bad bead that you don't even have to go to the doctor or anything. It's just a bad bead, and they basically were targeting fibromyalgia patients with fibromyalgia.
Yeah, it's a it's a bad condition. And then of course there's the issue of this affects an entire group, largely minority, African American, Hispanic, who now will not be caught up in the jail system for possession of marijuana or small amounts of drugs. So that's a good thing too.
Yep, I agree with you definitely. Getting off the I don't want to the pharmaceutical things with the opioids and things, that was just a horrible thing. And so this gives people an opportunity to relinquish or get out of some of the pain without being hooked on this other stuff.
It's more. It is
That's
definitely it's more a natural source
Right.
versus pharmaceutical drugs. Definitely.
One other question I had for you. Well, actually, before I even do that, here's a question. When I ran for alderman, they always would ask me, well, give me your elevator pitch. Do you have an elevator pitch?
You know, I was coming to that. I was definitely coming to that because I want to give Deidre some time just to give us all an idea of who she is, what your thoughts, what your values, your morality. You running? Why are you running for this vacancy, and what do you plan to do if you prevail? What's your vision for the communities? What's your vision just in a whole for what you plan on bringing?
Great.
Yep.
Those deep questions. And many people ask me, what kind of judge are you going to be? And my answer is a good one. And to me, the most important part of that job is making people feel as if they've received a just and fair forum to air their grievances, that the judge has listened to him or her, has listened to the story, has considered the evidence in full, and then makes a decision based on the facts and the law after fully considering what is given, and then explains to the person, well, this is why I'm ruling one way or the other, so that people have confidence in the judges, confidence in our legal system, and in our laws. That's very important. So I think patience, understanding are key things, and of course experience. 27 years doing trials. I've done over 50 jury trials, and then many hearings before courts, both state and federal, and there's a lot learned, of course, in that process. So I can take what I know and what I've learned over these years and use it to help people. And so I went into the law originally to help people, to make a difference in the world. And I want to continue doing that. I would like to go to the next level in my career, but the ultimate goal is the same, to continue to help people and bring some justice to Cook County, to the world.
Well, there's a book here, and are you familiar with this book?
I have not read it.
Okay.
I am sorry.
No. It's just again, this was brought to my attention because for those who don't see it, free advertisement, I imagine. There's a book called Crook County by Nicole Gonzalez Van Cleve, and it is her view, her interest, and her interactions with racism and injustice in America's largest criminal court, aka Cook County. And so she spent, I'm not sure how many years it was that she spent there, but coming from where you're coming from and listening to what you're saying, I can imagine that this is not something that, if you have seen it, you've probably said something against it, or it's just a matter of, from my experience and people that I know, this is not something they read about. This is something they live. And so I'm glad to hear that you're saying that your whole point is to make people feel as though the laws work evenly across the board for everyone, because a lot of people don't feel that way going into court.
And not only make them feel that way, but actually do it and apply the law equally to everyone, regardless of race, creed, color, what have you. Have I seen crookedness in Cook County? I can't say that I have. In Cook County, there's a long history. Actually, before I even started practicing, so I don't have any personal knowledge. But from what I'm gleaning from what you're saying, there is an element of institutional crookedness insofar as certain people seem to be treated differently. And I think it's even more, there are studies that show that people have been treated differently, particularly in our criminal justice system, based on their race. So is that crooked? Yes, in a sense it is.
And that's the issue. People want to be treated fairly, and I think that's above board what everyone wants. And so again, I'm happy to hear you say that that's your whole goal, to make people feel that the law works for them, not against them. I have one other thing to ask you, but apparently
now I have something, and I know, because you are running it, your every response is sensitive to your campaign, to you. So, and I do understand that something that is always been a conversation with just a lot of different people, and this is something where when it comes to the judicial system, you are said to be innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
But overall, in our communities, as far as African American and what the world considers minority, as far as Hispanic, Latinos, African American, things like that, we seem to be the opposite. We seem to be guilty until proven innocent. And so one of the reasons why I accepted the invite to the judicial breakfast, and I did my due diligence of trying to have you guys here on the show, is because we are, in my own little way, we're trying to change the dynamics, or even just start in shifting a little bit the dynamics of the gap between judges, the judicial system, and the community. This is a community show. And that's a concern, because of course I want to be upheld to what's stated in our law. Mm-hmm. I want to be upheld that way. I want to be innocent until proven guilty. I don't want to start off guilty until proven innocent, but we're treated more as we're guilty until we're proven innocent. What's your take on that?
I can't disagree that at least there's a perception that that's been the case with judges. I will say that is a fundamental tenet of the law, that you are innocent until proven guilty. I started out in the public defender's office, and so I do understand what you're saying, and maybe not even with respect to the judges, but when you have a jury pool, for instance, mm-hmm. and I'm sorry, many of the cases will go to a jury with 12 impartial people, members of the community. Well, there I think there needs to be some education, so that people really understand what that means. And part of the education has to, and this also goes for judges, has to address implicit bias. So that's not something that's a bias that we're even aware of, mm-hmm. within ourselves. Mm-hmm. the little thing that clicks in your brain when you are presented with a certain situation. So we have to educate about this implicit bias, and judges and our jury pool as well. And I think most people, if they are aware of it, will try to do something about it. That's my hope. And then if we do that, we can truly uphold what is obvious tenet of the law, and that is you're innocent until proven guilty.
And also making, whether it's an inmate that's coming in dealing with the trial, or if it's just someone that was in a random traffic stop off of the street. I know for myself, I've been a victim of that, of almost feeling like I'm being treated as if I'm guilty, and you haven't even found out the entire story to find out that I'm actually innocent, and I just think that we all, as far as within our communities, and I'm just going to be honest, as far as in the African American and the Latino community, we not only we want that to be upheld, but we want to feel that way. I don't want to feel like an animal that doesn't mean anything because I'm in a little trouble, or I'm in trouble, or whatever the case is, that the reason why I'm sitting in front of you and I have this jury here and this entire situation is going on, regardless to now, I mean, yes, of course, there's cases that are just outrageous. You have serial killers, things like that, of course, it's just outrageous.
But
for anyone,
in that case, even you take the most egregious case, the burden is still the same, and
as far as finding evidence and things like that. I don't want to be treated as if I am guilty and we haven't even gotten a verdict from all of the evidence that I'm guilty. I want to be treated as a human being, and I want in consideration. Now, of course, you have to do your job. Everyone has to do their job, and if you're innocent, you're innocent. If you're guilty, you're guilty. But at the same time, everyone, I know, and I'm going to be very honest, I've been arrested before, and there was times that I've heard other people, I have family members, that police officers, when you're in courtrooms, they'll say things to you like, everyone's innocent. You know what I mean? Like, they'll say everyone's innocent in the, in the police station, and I've seen cases, and they're like, but no, they're not really trying to hear the situation. They're like, everyone's innocent. Oh, the county's full of innocent people. But as we see on TV, as we see in the papers, people are being pardoned because for 20 years they were innocent. So it is actually right. Some people out there that are innocent, but it's just kind of almost like once the judicial system has their hand on you, it's just like you're guilty, and it's not taking consideration if you're not guilty or not. And then we do have these situations where people are being pardoned after 30 and 40 years because they were actually innocent. Those are the things that I think, more than anything, for anyone that's running for a judge, those are the things that I want to see different.
I agree with you. I mean, as I said, everyone must be treated equally and with dignity.
Yes.
Just because you are accused of a crime doesn't mean you have no rights, or your rights are abrogated. No. I am representing about 100 or so inmates at Jacksonville Prison.
Wow.
And these are people who were convicted.
How do you
so
sleep?
They were found guilty, but they were subjected to an unlawful strip search. In fact, several of them.
Okay. So it's a class act case. Okay.
Class case, and that just shows the point that just because they have been convicted of whatever it was, I don't care necessarily. This is a minimum security prison, so we're not dealing with hardened, dangerous people. But they don't deserve to be treated like animals. They don't deserve to be lined up in a room and made a public spectacle. That's just not permissible in a civilized society. So yeah, I agree with you. We can't do that. We can't treat people like that, and we have to, as judges, of course, always be mindful of exactly what you're saying.
So as a judge, I mean, and then Paul, you can definitely come in. As a judge, how are you able to, and I know totally that everything is not just on you. There's a long list of chain of command and things like that that all go along with you and your seat being a judge. But how does your presence, or how can you assist as a judge? And of course, not speaking for all judges, but just with you. How could you assist with that being something that is, if not totally changed, but influenced, that we need to be treated still as human beings, regardless to what we're dealing with when we are attached to the judicial system?
Yeah, and although there may be a chain of command, every judge is in control of his or her courtroom. So, as if I were a judge, I would not have to follow the direction of anyone if I'm hearing a particular case and I'm considering evidence and considering the law. The chief judge is not ever going to tell me you have to rule this way or that way. So you are in control of your courtroom, and you are in control of the people who are working with you, and that's the court clerk, the sheriff, and whoever, the attorneys in your courtroom.
Prosecutors, things like that.
The prosecutor in a criminal case, the public defenders, in probate, public guardian, whatever people you have and you're working with in your courtroom, you as a judge, it's your obligation to make sure that everyone is treated with dignity, and if you see something happen in the courtroom that is inappropriate, you have to address it. And so it really is largely up to the judge in a particular courtroom as to ensure that people are treated a certain way. Now, that doesn't help when you're talking about institutional biases and things like that, but just in terms of how you treat people with dignity. Do you listen to them fully and fairly? Are you thinking about any biases or what have you that may be interfering? You have to be mindful.
Going to your point of controlling of your courtroom, the one question I had, do you find that mandatory sentencing, is it a hindrance or is it a help?
Mandatory sentencing.
Because that takes the control out of the judge's hands.
I'm very much against mandatory sentencing, and for many years we had in federal court mandatory sentencing guidelines, and the judges could not deviate, and that law has changed.
Okay, so that has changed.
That has changed. There are certain crimes, and I don't do a lot of criminal work, although I still do some. I was at 26th Street today. But there are certain crimes or certain offenses where you could get bumped up a level if it's your third offense, let's say, or if it's near a school or what have you. But there still is a large amount of discretion in the hands of the judge, and you usually have a range of years statutorily that you can consider, and then of course you consider the person's background, their circumstances, and things like that to determine what is the fairest sentence if you are sentencing.
The reason I asked is because in a previous life I was in the Postal Inspection Service, and so we dealt on federal levels with a lot of different extenuating circumstances, either, like you said, added on or subtracted, depending upon what the judge wanted, unless they ran across the mandatory sentence and then everything went out of the door.
That's right. It
So,
was really tough.
yeah,
Really tough.
because it would break people down. It was not think like, oh, I gotta go for how long?
Right.
So yeah.
Well, it forces people to plead, even though they may or may not be, guilty.
At least not to that extreme, but they gotta
Right.
go. Well, if I gotta,
Right.
no, yeah, you're right. It does force some people to do actions they otherwise would not take.
That's right.
So, but okay.
Now, do you have anything else?
Other than my thank you, no.
I would like to touch on the youth.
Yes.
Youth in the courtrooms. I'd like to get your thoughts in as far as how our youth are being charged, treated for certain type of cases, certain situations. Personally, but of course I'm not a judge. Queenie for president, but
Sounds good.
yeah, but I do know of some situations, and I think our youth are being treated a bit harshly, and I'll
Does the word railroaded come to mind?
railroaded, but also treated harshly, and think just because, granted, there's just some bad out there. There's just some bad, whether you want to say it's just evil, whether you want to say it just can't get right. But I think that for a person that is 14, comes from a broken home, which we see all too much in our communities, African American communities, Latino communities, we have a lot of, it is what it is, we have a lot of the youth that are coming from broken homes. So one thing that I was always taught is an idle mind is the devil's playground.
Yeah.
So when you have youth that are coming from broken homes, they are not being guided they're not being supported, and they're just kind of out here. And
Right.
there's a lot of them, they're just out here, and they find themselves in some dumb stuff because they're just kind of walking the streets because mom is not on them. Dad may be in jail, maybe opposite, or parents may be drug addicts, or whatever the case is.
Right.
Not even always the case. You may just have a mom and a dad that's working the hell out of their life, and they're just not home because they work a lot.
Right.
And you find these kids that are, they're able to be outside, able to kind of be out on the streets, and they don't have anything else to do. Someone says, hey, let's do this, and they say, okay, they have no one guiding them. They find themselves in something. And then, as we know, we do, as far as the judicial system, you look at, like you said, the background and your history and things like that. But I would think, and what I would like to see our youth being more, finding the root to those problems a little bit more versus
Punishment.
just punishment.
Right.
Because a young man or a young woman that may right now find themselves arrested for stealing. They find themselves arrested for stealing. They may be stealing because they're hungry. They're not eating. And rather than to take that young boy that's getting himself in a lot of trouble because he doesn't have any guidance, to lock him up versus finding the root to his problem. Maybe he needs a program. Maybe he needs housing. Maybe he doesn't need Roosevelt Street or Harrison. Maybe he doesn't need the youth detention center. Maybe he needs food.
Right.
Those are the things that I think that I see happening, and those are some of the biggest things that I'd like to see changed a little bit, just because we need our youth and we need them to be guided more than locked up.
I agree. I am a strong proponent of restorative justice, which attempts to provide alternative dispute avenues for our young people. And a number of years, I worked with the Chicago Bar Association Interfaith Committee,
Okay.
and we went to schools on the west and south sides and worked with students and taught them about restorative justice. And one group would be a peace circle, another would be a peer jury, and then I worked with kids putting together a jury trial. And at the end, everyone came together and we performed, the kids performed for one another, depending on what group they were in, and discussed the different ways to resolve, in this case, the same dispute. Everyone had a similar fact pattern. And it's promising, and the kids love it, and they understood that it was much preferable to talk about things perhaps on an informal basis than to go through a jury trial.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to avoid. We want to keep kids out of the criminal justice system, out of the juvenile courts,
Definitely.
if we can. So one of the reasons I'm running for the Colleen Sheehan vacancy is Colleen Sheehan, she recently retired, but she was involved in restorative justice, and I believe there's a court that has recently been set up in Englewood to resolve disputes in a more equitable way for youngsters.
Okay.
So, and that inspires me. I think we need to do more of that, and we need to do more of that at the school level and
Yes.
at the community-based level, before some of these things ever come to a judge, at least in a formal judicial setting.
Okay. Paul, I'm going to come back to that. We shut down for a little bit. I'm going to get it back up, and then because I have one more question that I'd like to ask that, because I was just actually introduced to something that you spoke on. But Paul, while I get this in order,
sure.
can you take over, please?
Yeah, no problem. I'm not familiar with this. You said there's in Englewood a court.
Yes.
So what are do you know the details?
I
of
do
that?
not know the details. It's fairly new.
Okay.
But I know it is an attempt to bring these restorative justice techniques into the community,
Okay.
to avoid or to channel some of these
Away from
problems away from the
violence
formal.
and-
Yes.
Okay, because what it does is then we're seeking to stop the violence and everything else and get them, like you said, talk about it. Very difficult to get them to talk, but I think at least we have to start. It's a starting
We do.
process. What Queenie had said was addressing the root. A lot of times, and I have this issue when I talk to people, people always see, well, this is what's going on. Yes, this is what's going on, but how do we get to this point? We do have to track back and go, like you said, institutional racism and things of that nature that has festered and grown over these years. If we don't fix the root of the problem, the problem is going to resurface no matter what you do.
That's right.
So, restorative justice is it's kind of hard for me to even look at that restorative justice. And before we can get to restorative justice, we need to approach and say, hey, well, let's not get into the system. That's what I call it. Let's not even get into the system.
That's right.
An old parable used to tell me was, if you were walking along the side of a beach and there was a bridge or thing and you saw a child drowning, you can swim out and you can get that one child and bring them in. By the time you bring the child in, you see another child out there. And then you say, oh, okay, so you go out and get that child. And this can occur over and over and over until you realize that children are jumping off the bridge. So instead of waiting till they're in the water drowning, go up to the bridge and find out why they're jumping.
That's right.
And so that's
right.
kind of what I look at doing. I also run a not-for-profit called We Are Village, and we focus on young men of color from the ages actually of 6 to 14.
Wonderful.
Because statistically we have deemed that 6 to 14, if we can get them in and start building them up before the negative aspects of the streets get to them, we can kind of direct and guide them. We can't can't do everybody. Everyone's not going to accept it, but we have a good turnover rate. So, and then what we try to do is we find other non-for-profits that deal with the older going, from 12 to 18, 12 to 20, and we kind of direct say, well, you could go to this group. It's just
It's fantastic.
because what, like she said, idle hands are the devil's play shop. So give them something to do.
It's not only doing something. It's being able to see yourself in the future and to have hope that you will be able to achieve your dreams. And I think that's where we have to start from. That whatever you want to do as a child is achievable. Now, we know that's not always the case. I could say I want to be a ballerina, for instance. I loved ballet. I danced.
90% of us are not.
But
What we said in
I'm
that first
sure.
grade classroom of
Right.
what we wanted to be when we grow
but,
up.
But to the extent of, yes, I had an idea that I wanted to do something important, that I wanted to help people, that what I did affected other people, what I did mattered, how hard I studied was going to make a difference in the future.
Correct.
All of those things, if I didn't have that basis, then
Yeah. And
you don't have the hope.
The biggest basis, someone cares about me.
Yes. I mean, I think that of course everyone matters, but I think right now, overall for me, I would like to see my judges. I would like to see and make sure that the youth are being treated correctly, because the adults were one-time youth, and we have a lot of adults that are products of what happened to them
right.
when they were youth.
Right.
And now this is what I wanted to ask you about, because I just recently found out about this. I was along with someone whose child got into some trouble, and we've got about 10 minutes or so left for the show, and if you could just explain it, because this is something that I think a lot of people should know. I may not be right in what my thoughts are about this program, and you spoke on the peer jury program for the youth. Now, to my understanding, because we read the paperwork, now what happened that particular night? We were in the station and we were to pick up a child who they got caught stealing out of a store, and we had to go and pick up the child, and the parent was presented this paperwork saying, no, they don't worry about it, they're not going to have to go to court. And we were presented this paperwork to sign the child out. My mom was a stickler for read any and everything
Good.
before you sign.
Good.
So when they, said this is what they wanted the parents to sign and everything, I read everything out. And what kind of alarmed me is, what alarmed me was initially we weren't told that everything that was being presented to us was an option. We weren't told that. We were presented this, we were told, don't worry about it. Oh no, they won't be going to court. It's on with the youth, it's a point system or something like that now. And this was the Larrabee, the police station over on Larrabee by North Avenue. So we were told, oh, they won't be going to court. And that kind of, I was like, they're not going to court, because it's a situation. And they said, oh no, they won't be going to court. And they said, and everything was over with. Okay, we're releasing the child. We just need you to sign this as a release. So when I read it, it was the form of the peer jury. It was the peer jury form. And when I read through that form, it states that by signing that, and it is optional, by signing that form, you sign away your, and I wanted to bring it with me, but I forgot. I forgot the paper. but it's basically, it stated that signing that form is what is making the child not have to go to court.
Right.
But it's signing away your right for legal representation. So in that form, it basically stated that if the mother signed that form, no, the child wouldn't go to court, but they would be, their sentence and everything would be judged on, or whatever the peer jury is going to decide with this situation. So if that was signed, in my understanding, that would go to whoever, that would go to the peer jury. We don't be, and then the form said that they would be called. We would be called, and
You got to direct. What are you trying to ask?
well, I'm just trying to ask about this. We would be called, and they would let us know what the child's sentence or whatever would be from this peer jury that we don't know. We were not seen. We would be contacted by them, and then it was basically, it stated that you are waiving your right for legal representation. That I said no, don't sign that, because with this peer jury that we don't see right now, this goes to them. They decide, they call us and let us know what their decision is going to be. And it's based on background. It's based on and it clearly said in this form, it's based on your family's background, schooling. All of these things are determined. But what alarmed me was the signing this. You're waiving your right for legal representation. But it was presented to us. We were said they don't have to go to court. Sign this form. It was basically just given. And it was being presented as just sign them out, when in all actuality,
So your complaint is that they're not telling you it's an option.
It's
they're
an
telling
option.
you this is your only thing you can do.
And then when the parent refused to sign it, because I read it to them and explained to them what was it said, the police officer said, well, you sign this or not, they're not going to be released. And I was like, wait a minute, no, because this is optional. If I don't sign this just, well, if the parent, she doesn't sign this just means she's going to have to go to court.
Right.
So my concern with the youth is that this form is being presented to the parents or the representation of the youth, telling them, oh no, they don't have to go to court, and not telling them that you're waiving your rightful legal representation. So if you're not okay with whatever this peer jury decides, you can no longer bring a lawyer in. If you can't afford a lawyer, you can't bring a lawyer in because you signed your rights away. And they were stern about, if you don't sign this, we're not going to release the child. That concerns me.
I honestly have never heard of that. This may be what I was talking about. It's a fairly new program. It sounds like they are not addressing it in an appropriate way, of course.
But we were told like it wasn't optional.
Yes, you have to be told these are your options. If you sign this paper, you are waiving your rights to counsel. And I don't know what the paper says, but it has to describe what a peer jury is. At least what we. Okay, good. Please do.
I'm going to send it to you,
do.
because this was very alarming that night, because it really concerned me, because I'm thinking, so right now what's going on is our people are not being told that, they're not being explained to that this is optional. You're waiving your right to go to court, and you're waiving your right for legal counsel. And if you are intelligent enough to read it, they're intimidating you, saying if you don't sign this,
that's wrong.
We're not going to release your child. Yeah. Along with them not allowing the parent to see the child, and there was no youth officer brought in that night to deal with the child.
Well, that's wrong too.
That was wrong on
so many levels.
Right,
yes,
but
there has to be a parent.
But this is what's going.
Officer,
this is what's going on at the police stations around the city, and this is what's going on with our youth.
Part of this is improper training, and maybe that comes back to what you mentioned initially with the consent decree, and
correct.
We need to fix these things.
Yeah.
And the courts will enforce that decree, and will enforce. It may take some time. The police officers have to be educated as to these programs as well. They're used to doing things as usual,
yeah,
their way.
Their way in that.
And here is something completely different. So there's some education, there's some training that they have to.
But you made a point. You made a very valid point, and I had to consider this, that these police officers, and it doesn't matter if they're white or black or Hispanic, whatever the case is, they are trained in this way. And the procedures they're being trained by, the procedure and the people who are training them are people who are used to a different era. And
Right.
that's what has been replicated over and over and over. So, as I think you told me the words were, I think you read them the Illinois statute on they're supposed to have a juvenile officer there.
Yeah.
And the police officer told her, I don't know what you're reading, but that's not how we do things
And then,
here.
so because we do this, I have a lot of friends that know the law. I have a lot of political friends. So, of course, when things like this start happening, I start making phone calls.
Good.
The law was sent to me. The particular law dealing with youth situation was sent to me. I asked for the commander or the lieutenant, and I showed them that particular law, and I was told,
Good.
well, we do things differently here.
Oh, really?
And that is what concerns me, because I witnessed being intimidated, saying, if you don't sign this, we're not going to release your child. There was no youth officer. So you're basically telling me that. And then there was another police officer that
Finally.
he kind of was off in the back, and I could tell that he didn't probably want to make any problems with his colleague and his comrades, but he was like, yeah, they don't have to sign that. You can't make them sign that. If they don't sign it, just give them a court date. And the other officers like, well, he still didn't release the child, and they still didn't let us go. He then said that he needed to call the detectives to make sure that was correct and it was okay. So at that point, I was like, so at this point, you're basically holding the minor hostage, and it clearly states that you are supposed to release the minor to their parent. And so that concerns
Correct.
me, because when you do things like that, that child, that may have done
Traumatized.
something to that child.
Oh, there is no doubt that
And-
these situations have an effect, can have a long-term effect on how the child views authority, to the
Respects
rest.
and how
Yes.
they actually react to if they do find themselves in another situation that may have done something for that child, to feel some type of way of they're going to do to me what they want to do to me regardless to the law, because that child also even saw me clearly reading the law to the commander, and
it made no difference.
the commander told me, or lieutenant, I don't want to lie on anyone, so it may not have been a commander, I don't remember exactly, but I know I asked for lieutenant or commander. We were told we do things differently here, and that concerns me, because these are our babies.
Absolutely. And if you're in that situation again, you should get the names of the officers who you're dealing with, who you're having difficulties with, and if need be, file a complaint, so that the
It can be
situation can be addressed.
Mhm.
Not a matter of punishment or anything like that, but that shouldn't be tolerated.
Yeah, because
And you don't want the next child to be subjected to the same thing.
and it's
All right.
not a plight of
We're getting-
anyone fired or anything like that. It's just the thought that everyone should be treated fairly.
And it's
We're
about
running out of time.
education.
And
We're at our closing times here.
on
So
that note,
on that note, I would like to say to Attorney Deidre Baumann, punch number is 219.
219.
Yes.
219. I wish you success
Thank
and
you
good
so much.
fortune in your pursuit of becoming a judge. Circuit Court judge, 6-year term.
March
Queenie?
March 17th.
March 17th.
March 17th. Can you just, for people who may not know, where are they going? They're going out to the polls. Can you give them that information on how they vote for you?
Yes, you will go to your local polling place, and of course we have early voting now. I believe it's I'm not sure when early voting starts. It starts sometime in February.
Okay.
And voting is a lot easier now. There's a central place downtown you can vote as well. But however you do it, whether it's early voting, vote by mail, or on election day, please do vote. You will see my name at punch number 219, and yeah, it's very important, and it's very important for each of the races that people will see, including the judges.
Okay. So we had the thank you cards made up, and what they read on the back is, we would like to take this time to just say thank you. Often people get left behind, their voices get lost. Your coming onto the Windy City Review proves that you care and are prepared to deal with the hard questions that we bring to you on behalf of the people. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
It's a pleasure.
All right.
Anytime.
Yes, thank you.
Anytime.
And we would like to extend our relationship with you. If you do not prevail, I'm sure you will still be working in the
Yes.
field, doing different things. Please keep us abreast of resources, things like that for the community. You can always email us, contact the way we did. We'll get that information out to the community.
Wonderful.
And you are always welcome to come back. Just let us know if it's something that you want to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
I have one shameless plug. As Queenie knows, I am now a official write-in candidate for
Yes.
the 9th Ward Committeeman. So you will not see my name on the ballot, but you can write it in.
Write
It's
it in.
Paul Collins. Very simple. PaulCollins, 9th Ward Committeeman. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, so I'm going to touch on that for the people that are in the 9th Ward. You hear that? If you follow this show, write his name in. That's PaulCollins. That would actually be my alderman if he actually wins.
Well, committeeman for
Well,
now.
committeeman. I'm sorry, my committee. I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to see you there, but that will be my committeeman. And one thing I can say for anyone that is tuning in that may have that option, Paul really has a heart for the community. I can say that, and I love sitting next to you.
Thank you.
And not just because you're my co-host. I know how you feel. I watch you, and I watch how you work in the community. And I definitely say, for anyone, he's definitely worth your vote.
Thank you.
All
Appreciate
righty. That is a wrap.
Thank you
Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
it. All right. Cello, we're out. Thank you.
Now, why did I wear these?
Just so you could hear yourself.
Ah, okay.
Just so you can hear yourself.
Okay.